A pretty boring day in the NFL. Just ho hum, another Tuesday.
Yeah, true story. I was with my two 94-year-old parents running some errands, taking them to some doctor's appointments this morning, and I messaged Dave. I was like, "Anything up? Quiet day." He's like, "Well, Russell Wilson got traded. Aaron Rodgers got paid. Something else happened." So yeah, pretty eventful. But it's funny, you just if you're off the grid for 3 hours and all of a sudden, all this happens. Pretty interesting stuff. Pretty momentous day in football.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast with Reuben, Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. I was in Indianapolis for the Combine last week, and it was funny. Last year, without the Combine, you wondered what it would do to the action in the NFL, because whenever you get the whole league in the same city for a week, there's bound to be talks, and it's bound to kick up some stuff. And it looks like that's exactly what happened this year. And we'll try to put all of it into the Eagles context, what it means for them as they move forward. A little bit later, we'll look through some free agent positions, some targets for the Eagles. We'll look at offense today. Later in the week, we'll flip over to the defensive side. And then with free agency kind of bearing down on us, we're going to take a look at all the Eagles pending unrestricted free agents. And we're going to put percentages on the likelihood those guys return. But yeah, we have to start with the big news. And it was funny. It was only separated by a few hours. We heard that Aaron Rodgers will, in fact, be back in Green Bay. The reported numbers of that deal are insane. And then the Russell Wilson news comes down a few hours later. He's getting traded to Denver for quite a haul. And at least that'll kind of put the end to the Russell Wilson rumors for a while until this contract's up.
I think Howie's been talking to the Broncos and trying to work something out. But yeah, it's funny because as soon as Dave told me the news, I Googled Russell Wilson trade, and a story came up. It was the headline. I feel bad for the guy. The headline was, "What does Aaron Rodgers' new contract mean for Russell Wilson's future in Seattle?" It's like the guy had about a 90-minute window where that story was relevant. That's pretty funny. That's the first thing that came up. But he's getting SEO's working for him because he's getting a lot of hits. So that's
probably. Did I ever tell you my Visante Shenko story?
Yes, I love that story. Yeah, well, why don't you share it?
I apologize if I told this before, but I was really young covering the Eagles. I wasn't even on the beat yet, and we were up at Lehigh, and the Eagles had Visante Shenko, an old tight end, older tight end now, out of league, but back then they had him in for a workout, and I waited out front of the field house there in Lehigh, and it was my job to talk to Visante Shenko, and damn it, I wasn't leaving until I talked to him. So I waited out there for an hour and a half, 2 hours in the sun. Finally talked to him. He was great, told me how great the workout went. And this was early days of you got to write it now and get it published and tweet it out. So I run back to the media trailer, write it up, gets up, story's out. I'm I'm the only one who has this. I feel great. Then 20 minutes later, he signed with the Patriots, and I felt like an idiot. So I know what that guy's going through.
Yeah. Well, you could have just given your quotes to Tom Curran or something.
That's true. Anyway, so the big Russell Wilson deal, I kind of got the sense from the Eagles last week that they weren't even really involved in this. I think they were kind of keeping an eye on it from afar, but they weren't really in this bidding war for Russell Wilson that was clearly going on, even though Seattle tried to say they weren't trading him. If I was Seattle, I wouldn't trade him, but as we know well here, if you have a quarterback who doesn't want to play in that city anymore, you got to make a decision and move on from him.
Yeah, it's really been interesting. I think this is kind of a relatively new phenomenon, isn't it? I mean, Peyton Manning changed teams late in his career, but when you look at Brady and Wilson and I mean, I'm just used to guys Drew Brees is, I guess, a bad example because he didn't start out in New Orleans, but I mean, once he's there, he's retiring as a Saint. Ben Roethlisberger retiring as a Steeler. Phillip Rivers retiring as a Charger. You're just used to seeing these guys play for the same team, and I think we're in an era now where that's really changing. Heck, if we had this conversation in 2017 about the Eagles' opening day quarterback, maybe being on his third team in 3 years, nobody would have believed it. But It's interesting how it's kind of almost getting NBA-ish, where these stars are unhappy for whatever reason and looking for another situation. It's different. It's weird. I'm not sure I like it.
I'm okay with it. To me, and I'm always like pro player and all this. And there's a lot of different circumstances in the players you just named. But there's kind of a theme with some of them where it's like these players are now real, especially quarterbacks. Yeah, I don't really think other positions have the power, but I feel like these quarterbacks are realizing like, no, we're really powerful. We're the reason our team's been good, or we want to get the respect we deserve. And so I'm okay with it. A few like Peyton Manning had the injury thing, and that they didn't know he was going to, and that they got Andrew Luck. So, you can't fault them too much. But yeah, you look at Brady, I think that was a respect issue. He wanted to show that he could do it without them. And with Wilson, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it seems like the relationship soured there a little bit. I still think he's a really good player. And I know people are saying he played at a lower level last year, but before he got hurt, I mean, he was still one of the best players in the league. And I have no reason to think he won't be that again.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's still a top 10 quarterback. But yeah, it's interesting. And I think, you learn a lot about what these quarterbacks really are when they go to a new team. I mean, Brady goes to Tampa, he's still the greatest ever. Belichick is going 7-9 or whatever, that first year. But yeah, I mean, I don't begrudge these guys going where they want and being in a good situation. It's just, it takes some getting used to. I like things staying the same. I like the same quarterback in the same place but you know what? It just goes to show you how tricky it is to, and it's true for all walks of life. I mean, to be in the same place, like as long as Ben Roethlisberger, I mean, coaches change and GMs change and teammates change, position coaches change, to make it work year after year for 18 years or whatever. It's really, really hard. And so I guess you're going to start seeing more of this. And, I mean, it used to be, I mean, I remember Troy Aikman never even got to the last year of a contract. I mean, he would get close and they'd give him another contract, tear it up. But yeah, things are changing and certainly interesting. Certainly is going to make next year. I mean, seeing some of these guys in a different uniform is going to be. I mean, imagine seeing Aaron Rodgers in a different uniform. I mean, that would have been crazy. But I don't think that's going to happen. So, but yeah, I think Russell Wilson's still really good. And I mean, but let's talk about how it affects the Eagles. I mean, I never thought, like you said, I never thought there was a real shot that it was going to happen here. It just didn't seem to make sense.
Well, I don't know. I would have. Let me actually ask you this.
I mean, for him, like,
oh, for him, okay,
yeah,
But I mean, then again, I look at Denver and I'm like, are they better than the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean that's a fair question.
Are they? And there's a report out there that Seattle didn't want to trade him to the NFC, which I understand, but also like Seattle going to be a contender with Drew Lock. Like what are we doing here? If you're a Russ, I know there was didn't want to go to the East Coast thing or whatever, but if you had a chance to go to a division like the NFC East and you like look around the quarterbacks there, he's going into a division now where, I mean, it is stacked at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought he might want to go to like a really big market because he's never. I mean, I guess as far as like doing media and commercials and endorsements and that stuff, you get to a certain point in your career, you're more marketable if you're playing in, New York or Philly or Chicago or Boston. Denver certainly not. I mean, maybe he's at the stature where it doesn't really matter. I think you see some guys who want to be in that big media market, after being in a place like Seattle. I don't know if that was a factor. It is an odd place for him. I mean, what do you look for if you're Russell Wilson in a team? I mean,
Chance to win,
yeah.
right?
I don't know if he has a better chance in Denver than he would here.
Let me read you the reported terms of this deal, and then we'll kind of look at it through an Eagle scope of whether or not you'd make that trade. And like I said, it doesn't look like it was ever even a possibility, especially if they didn't want to trade him to the NFC and if the Eagles never really got involved. But this is the terms from NFL Network. It was Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick, which is funny that they're giving up a 4th-round pick. The Broncos gave up 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, a 5th-rounder, Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant.
I personally think that's too much.
Do you? I don't think it is.
2 1s and 2 2s.
I don't think it's too much. Because I think whatever he was going to get, you start off with 2 1s, and it's going to take more than that. Now, maybe the players involved push it over, and it's hard because you're not going apples to apples when you're trying to figure out, all right, the Eagles don't have a Noah Fant at that, like, who would it be? Maybe Andre Dillard, someone like that. You're trying to figure out how you would do that. It would obviously be Jalen Hurts instead of Drew Lock. I think if I were the Eagles, I would have been willing to do that deal. And by the way, I see it's funny. Whenever there's a trade like this, there's always this rush to say who won. I mean, this is one where I kind of look at it and I think, I don't know if there's a clear-cut winner. If the Broncos got who I think is still a top 5 quarterback in the league, and Seattle got a haul for a guy that they were probably going to trade anyway.
Yeah. Somebody made a great point. If you didn't know the terms of the Rams-Lions trade, whatever the Rams gave up, is it too much? No, they won a Super Bowl. So ultimately, I mean, I just hate giving up 2nd-round picks. I was just like, I love 2nd-round picks.
The first-rounders are fine.
No, I mean, because you're assuming first-rounders. Like, I mean, that's like the starting point, so.
What do you think Seattle asked for? If this is what they landed on.
It's a great question. I mean, more than that, so who knows? But I'm sure that'll come out at some point. It's a lot, but yeah, if the Broncos win a Super Bowl with Russell Wilson, nobody's going to complain that they didn't have Noah Fant or that 2nd-round pick in 2023. So it's just one of the, they better be right.
And you also have to ask yourself, I mean, Russ isn't a kid anymore. How many years do you think he has left? He's been very durable in his career until last year where he had the injury, and then it looked like he came back a little early from that, and that threw him off a little bit. So you have to kind of have a leap of faith that he's going to continue to be durable, that he's going to play for a while, because this isn't the deal that you make for like 1 year. I mean, you're hoping he's your guy for, I mean, maybe 10 years is pushing it, but you're trying to get 6+ years out of this guy at a high level.
I think the hardest thing to do is really like evaluate when a quarterback is going to start declining or any. I mean, like some players, I mean, I guess you can use analytics. I mean, running backs start declining at 27, 28, receivers maybe more like 30. Tight ends are old. Yeah, there's a lot of tight ends playing when they're 33, 34 at a really high level. Quarterbacks, it's just such a wide disparity. I guess you have to scout, like, how do they take care of themselves? How I guess there's just a lot that goes into it other than just stats and can he still throw the ball? That's a really tough evaluation. I mean, we've seen some quarterbacks just lose it when they're in their late 20s or early 30s, and they're just Russell's what, 32. I mean, he doesn't. Other than the injury, I mean, he didn't show any signs of decline, but it's going to happen at some point. When's that going to be? How do you tell that? How do it's such a risky thing, because if you draft 2 guys in the first round and 2 guys in the second round, they're going to be all 4 are going to be in their prime for the next 5 or 6 years. They might not all be good. But we just don't know. You're kind of really banking on one guy to make it worth it. And there's just there's that element of we just don't know.
Yeah. And I guess the next question for the Eagles, even though it didn't seem like they were super in on this at any point, where do they go from here? Because Russ is off the board. Aaron Rodgers off the board that was, if we thought Russ was unlikely, that was super unlikely. But I think both of us agree that if they were going to make some sort of move for a veteran quarterback, it would have to be an elite type player for several reasons. First is like, you don't know what Jalen Hurts is going to be, and you want to let him develop unless you're getting a clear-cut answer. The other one is the locker room aspect. He's won over this locker room. So if you're going to bring in another veteran quarterback, it better be someone who demands respect, whether that's Wilson or Rodgers, or a guy we'll talk about in another minute here. But really, I think there are three options for the Eagles in 2022. One is the most obvious, the most likely. Run it back with Jalen Hurts. We're playing a percentage game later, but I'd put a pretty high percentage on that being the option that ends up sticking. And I think the Eagles know that. I think that's why they've been so strong in their support of Hurts all offseason. The second option, there's really only one other elite level veteran quarterback who could become available, and it's Deshaun Watson. And that's a really tricky situation. It's a tricky conversation. But I still think that has to be on the table. And then the third option is drafting a quarterback. And that only happens if they really fall in love and if they have to be just so sure it's the right guy. And based on what we've seen of these quarterbacks, that seems hard to believe that one of them is going to make the Eagles fall in love with him. Do you kind of agree with those three options?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. I mean, you have to, if you're going to give something up, you have to make sure you're getting someone who's appreciably better than Jalen Hurts. Because you're not going to give up picks for a lateral. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't know if he's better than Jalen Hurts or that if he will be next year.
And even if he is, he's not enough. Yeah. I almost said enough better. I'm glad you said it because it doesn't sound right.
I think it is okay, but enough better. But yeah, better enough. But yeah, I mean, there's other veterans out there who are going to be available, but what are you doing here? What do you? I mean, Deshaun Watson's the only, and
the Colts quarterback's available.
That's an interesting name. Yeah, interesting. Imagine if they brought him back. No, and the weird thing about Watson is that, like, it doesn't seem any closer to any of this being resolved than it was a year ago. So, I mean, there's no question that if it was resolved, that Howie would do everything he could to get him. I don't think there's any question about that. But they're not going to do it if this stuff is hanging over, unless they have some kind of assurance from the league somehow that he's not going to be suspended. I just don't see it.
It feels like it has to play out, and who knows? I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take. He didn't play the entire season. I know he's a great player, but at a certain level, you just wonder what that does. This guy's sat for a year.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he wasn't practicing. Yeah, he was idle.
But what I can tell you is whenever there's a situation like this, the Eagles know what's going on. And that leads to them being involved in a lot of rumors. It does. There's a reason they're linked to so many of these players that have, and I don't want to compare this situation to anything else because they're all so unique and different, but that's why you hear about it, because the Eagles, we always hear about due diligence. The Eagles subscribe to that theory. If there's a great player, and he is a great player, if there's a great player that might become available for whatever reason, no matter how awful it might be, they're going to keep an eye on it, and they're going to find out what's actually going on, or at least they're going to try to find out. And that's their process. And so if you hear about the rumors, I think that's the reason. I think the reason is because, they probably are paying attention. They probably are trying to find out if it's a possibility what it would take, what the ramifications of that move would be, I think there's too many hurdles to get over. And, fans are going to ask themselves from a morality standpoint if they even want the Eagles to get over those hurdles to bring in a guy who has all those allegations against him. But from what we know about the Eagles, they're not shy about looking into things.
And that's a positive. I mean, they do their homework, and then if the guy does become available, then all of a sudden you're in a pretty strong position to make a determination. What's he worth? Is this somebody we want? We've already done the legwork, and we can make that call quickly. So I give them credit for doing it. And we'll see what happens. Unless something changes miraculously with Deshaun Watson and very soon, I don't think he's gonna play next year. I just don't know when he's going to play again. If he's going to play again, who knows?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like I still believe he's young enough. Like even if you're like he's going to play football again at some point.
Yeah, he will. Yeah,
right. And as much as everyone hates him now, and maybe rightfully so, I'll tell you what. If he starts winning in a city, as awful as it sounds, a lot of people are going to forget what happened. And a lot of people are going to forget about the allegations. He's going to win football games, and he's going to be a good player. And it feels gross talking about it in those terms, but let's be honest. That's what happens in pro sports, especially in the NFL. We've seen it time and time again.
It's true. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's a very fair point. It'll be interesting. I was thinking today, Jalen Hurts is 23, and he's already taken a team to the playoffs. Why doesn't he get the same benefit of the doubt? I mean, there's not a lot of 23-year-old quarterbacks that have gone to the playoffs to start with, and it's not like he had a great team around him. It was an average defense. It was a terrible defense for much of the year. One of the starting receivers couldn't catch. The coach struggled the first half of the year, and he still got this team to the playoffs, so it was a big part of it. Why doesn't he get, like, if he was a first-round pick, would these conversations be happening? And it's a weird deal. I mean, what reason is there to think he won't get better next year? Now, if he doesn't, and we've talked about this, then you have options in going into 2023. But just seems like we spent so much time this offseason talking about replacing a quarterback who went to the playoffs in his first year as a starter, which not many quarterbacks do, especially 23-year-old with a new head coach. So, and obviously the Eagles are part of that. The Eagles are part of that questioning going on. So it's a weird situation. I give Jalen credit because it doesn't seem to bother him. Mm-hmm. All anyone does is try to replace the guy, and he wasn't great last year, but I think he deserved another year. So we'll see what happens. But it's a really weird situation. I mean, if he was a first-round pick and played the way he did last year, none of this would be happening. Obviously, there'd be more salary ramifications too. I mean, there really aren't any with him because he's on a second round deal. If he was on a first round deal, it'd be a lot harder to replace him. But they have done that as well with first round picks. But it's top to bottom, it's a weird, unique, almost kind of awkward in a way situation. I'm sure Jalen will be happy once it's all resolved. I know I will.
Yeah, but the answer to that question though. It's why the questioning, because part of it is he wasn't a first round pick, but part of it is the reason he was a second round pick was because there were flaws in his game, and we've seen those flaws now play out at the NFL level. And I'm with you. Like I still think he can get better, and he's already gotten better than the version of we saw in college, the version we saw in his rookie year. So there's still reason to think he's ascending, but the flaws are there. And they're pretty plain. And those are the same flaws that led him not to be a first round pick. So I get the questioning. it's not fair to him in the same way. Like, it's almost like the Doug Peterson thing. He doesn't deserve to be fired, but he got fired, right? I mean, it feels like that. Like, Jalen Hurts deserves to be the starter in 2022, but if he's not for one of these other reasons, I think everyone will be like, all right, well, I understand what they're doing.
I guess. I just wonder how many 23-year-old quarterbacks who've gone to the playoffs in their first year as a starter haven't gotten better. Something I could look at. But anyway, I'm sure we'll be talking much more about quarterbacks through the offseason.
Yeah, this probably won't be the last time it comes up.
I have a
hunch. I just finished my free agent target series, and I figured it would be fun to run through some of the positions and some actual player names that I think might interest the Eagles. They have some money to play with in free agency, not as much as other teams. It's about $20 million, but then again, they're going to have to pay what might end up being a very expensive rookie class because they have 3 first-round picks. So it's all, not real money at this point anyway, but they don't have a ton to work with. They have some to work with, but we'll start with.
And also, if you are drafting 3 guys in the first round, that kind of makes free agency a little less urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And if they draft fewer guys, then they'll have more money available in the cap. So they'll make it work. But anyway, what do you got?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with quarterback because we might as well keep it going. And these options are not to be the starter. I kind of looked at it as a situation where if a team wants Gardner Minshew and they're willing to pony up a high draft pick for him, well, then the Eagles are going to have to replace him because they can't go into a year with Reed Sinnett as their backup quarterback. Maybe they draft a guy, but I came up with some veteran options in free agency that I think would make some sense. I'll kind of go through them here. I'll list the 5. And then you tell me of those 5, which one you'd be most interested in. That work?
Not Joe Flacco, but go ahead.
Marcus Mariota, Jacoby Brissett, Tyrod Taylor, Mitchell Trubisky, and then again, Joe Flacco.
I think Trubisky's going to get some money. I think
it seems that. I couldn't believe how many people were talking to me about Trubisky at the Combine. So did we all forget what happened?
He's like the hot name all of a sudden as
real weird
quarterback. But Mike, I think it's important to have a guy who understands his position. He wants to be a starter, but he's going to support the starter. Tyrod makes sense to me. He's been around. He's a capable guy. He's been a Pro Bowler back earlier in his career. He can win you a couple games, and he understands his place. Understands he's probably 32 now, going into his 12th year in the league. So don't think it'll cost a whole lot. I'd be fine with him.
Yeah, he's a guy who I think wants to still be a starter. I felt so bad for him a few years ago. Remember he had the doctors with the Chargers like punctured his lung and he was supposed to play, and then Herbert got in there and never gave the job back.
Yeah.
Felt bad for him there. I don't know, like Mariota would make some sense because he's obviously a mobile quarterback, so you could kind of run the same offense. Brissett knows the verbiage, at least some of it from Sirianni. Another guy I didn't list was, how about like a Ryan Fitzpatrick? Would that do anything for you?
Yeah, nah. He's all right. He's okay. He always ends up as a starter somehow, somewhere.
I know. There's like some weird voodoo there. You don't want to bring him in because
exactly.
He'll end up starting.
Exactly. I still think Mariota can play. I'm not sure. I think if he got in the right situation, I think he's okay. But Tyrod, I think Tyrod makes sense. And I think when we did our stay or go, I have Minshew going. I think Howie will trade him. And
what do you think it would take if you're a team out there and you want a quarterback? I think a team that would trade for him is someone that they have a starter who kind of stinks and they're like, I don't know if he's the best option. Maybe this guy can push him or maybe win the job. What would you have to get for him?
What did they trade for him?
It was the same deal as Flacco. It was a conditional 6th, I believe.
Anything better than that? I think a 5 would do it, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a 5 that could become a 4, but I would do it.
I would definitely try to put conditions on that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You pretty much with a quarterback. Yeah, pretty much you're going to do that to protect yourself from if the guy ends up, taking a team to the playoffs. It becomes a 4, makes a Pro Bowl, whatever, throws 20 touchdowns. But yeah, Tyrod's my guy, and I feel good about that.
Okay. All right, let's go to running back next. The Eagles right now have Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell. They'll definitely be back next year. Boston Scott's a restricted free agent, so the Eagles have to figure that out. And then Jordan Howard is unrestricted. You want me to do the same thing, give you these 5 names?
Sure.
Okay. Marlon Mack, Cordero Patterson, James Conner, Rashad Penny, Dante Foreman.
My guy's Marlon Mack. I think
so. Familiarity.
Yeah, familiarity. I mean, it was a 1,000-yard rusher, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? And, lost his job. I couldn't believe he's like 25. Like some of these guys, some of these free agents, they've been around, 5 years. You look them up, they're like 25, 26. I think Marlon Mack is being like 31, hasn't played a whole lot. He had a lot of carries that 1 year, his one big year, but, he's a punishing runner. He's a little different than, I guess he's the closest to Jordan Howard as far as being a physical inside type runner. If you want, if you're going to be replacing him, I'm not sure they'll add a guy at that position, but I'd be good with Mack out of that group.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you that if you're looking for them to add, I don't know if this is where they'll go in free agency with that money. And some of these guys are going to, like Cordero Patterson, his career has been so strange. He's probably going to get some big money actually this year. And I put him there because he's a fun name and because they could use the help on returns too. But I don't know if the Eagles have the offense set up to make that worth the money. The one for me is Dante Foreman. What was he, like a 3rd-round pick? Because he is a big guy. He runs hard. I think he would be an ideal Howard replacement. James Conner would be too, but I tend to think someone's going to pay him a little bit more than the Eagles would be willing to pay. So that'd be my guy. But I'm with you that I kind of think it's a little unrealistic for them to throw money at that position.
Agree. And, and that would free him up to tender Boston and make sure you don't lose him.
Yeah, exactly. How about offensive linemen? I don't necessarily think this is a place where they look to add someone, but I'll go through the names here. You don't have to pick one. But Ben Jones, veteran center. And my thinking here was I wrote this one, we're still not 100% sure. But if Kelsey were to retire and they didn't feel like Isaac Seumalo was ready to be the center, a guy like Ben Jones, he's about the same age as Kelsey, but if he was willing to play for another year, that would make some sense. Alex Kappa from the Bucks. I wrote this before Ali Marpet retired, so I don't know if that's going to happen. Jermaine Ifedi, Seahawks former high draft pick. Then we have Cornelius Lucas, who's kind of been a backup swing tackle, and Mark Lewinsky, Indy connection, has started a bunch of games with the Colts. I think that they went in free agency to be a low-level offensive lineman.
Yeah, well, I think if they do trade Dillard, which I think is fairly likely, you get somebody who can back up both tackles. I mean, I'm not sure what they think of LaRaven Clark. I mean, he started some games in the league. I think a guy like Jermaine Ifedi makes sense. He can play right or left. He started a bunch of games in the league. He's not awful. If he's your swing tackle, yeah, I'd be cool with that.
Kind of the same thing with Lucas for me.
Yeah.
He's proven he can play both sides, and I think that's what you need ideally.
Yeah.
And I kind of wrote that with the thought that Dillard will get moved because I think that's pretty likely. They don't have to move Andre Dillard, but something tells me they will.
I agree. It was funny in Howie's presser last week in Indy. He was asked about Dillard, and he said, I think it's a mistake to just think of him as a left tackle. It's like,
yeah,
that's basically him campaigning to trade him. I mean, he's telling teams, "Oh, he can play right tackle. Okay, we'll trade for him." Why else would he bring that up? So,
yeah,
I'm not sure that's the case. He should be able to with some reps, at least be functional at right tackle. But yeah. I do like having a big V type of guy who can get you through some games.
It's a useful player.
I mean, Driscoll, we haven't seen Driscoll play left tackle. I'm sure he could. If Kelsey comes back, I mean, if Kelsey retires, we don't know who the right guard is going to be. If he comes back, it's going to be most likely Sayamalo at right and Dickerson at left, I would think. So Driscoll could be that backup guy. He can back up both guards, Herbie,
and both tackles,
and both tackles. So he's a valuable guy. The injuries are a concern, but I don't mind. I don't mind having a veteran guy like Lucas or Effetti.
Yeah. All right, let's move to tight end, where the Eagles have Dallas Goedert, clear cut number one, but then things get a little interesting because you have Jack Stoll, who had an okay rookie year, but they might want to upgrade that spot, that tight end 2 spot. And then at the third tight end spot, Tyree Jackson tore his ACL late in the season, so he's probably not going to be ready for a while. Then you have, Richard Rodgers, if you want to run him back again. He'll probably end up here again at some point because that's what happens. But
he's been here longer than Selleck.
It feels that way, doesn't it? But I have some names here. Mo Alley Cox, obviously a connection there with this coaching staff. Max Williams, James O'Shaughnessy, O.J. Howard, and Gerald Everett. Mo Alley Cox is the one that intrigues me the most. He was you probably remember him, former VCU basketball player, goes to Indianapolis, and Kevin Michael is the one who gets his hands on him and teaches him how to play tight end. And then all of a sudden, here he is. He's had a decent career. The last 2 years have been pretty good. He's a free agent. Michael's here. I said Kevin Michael?
Jason Michael.
It's Jason Michael. I think Kevin Michael.
I was just trying to remember if Mo Alley Cox was on that VCU team that beat Drexel in the CAA championship game by 1 point.
Can't help you there.
I covered that game down in Richmond, and the kid from Trenton Catholic had a shot right in front of me with a 3 at the buzzer, and it just rimmed out. And they were like 28-2 and didn't get into the NCAAs. And if you made that shot, they would have gotten in. Damian Lee was on that Drexel team, by the way. Before you, obviously in the NBA now. But anyway, I actually
sometimes I let you go on those just to see where you end up.
Yeah. I
can feel you like throw me a life raft, and I'm like, nah, I'm gonna see how this ends.
I can usually find my way out. Max Williams is a guy who's never caught a whole lot of balls, but I think he can. I think he's actually a decent receiver. I think he caught like 30 as a rookie, 30, 35 as a rookie. And the last few years, he's averaged like 13 yards a catch. I think he could help you out. I don't think he's going to cost very much. I do think it's a position they got to address because, Jack Stoll showed he can block, and Tyree Jackson's an intriguing prospect or project, but they really don't have a guy who can go out and catch you 25, 30 balls, which you want, TE2 to do. So it's something they got to address somewhere.
Yeah. And if you're looking for the somewhere might be in the draft, because this is a pretty good crop of tight ends. That was the one thing being down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl that really stuck out. When I got back from that trip and I thought, man, there were a lot of good tight ends, and it's probably going to push some into the mid rounds, which is kind of where they are already. I mean, you don't see a lot of first round tight ends. There's going to be some options there when they're in the 4th, 5th round. And I wouldn't be shocked to see them use one of those picks on a tight end.
It's interesting. They haven't drafted a tight end. Ertz and Goddard are the only tight ends they've drafted in the last decade in any round.
Yeah, that's weird.
Who was the last tight end before that? Like Cornelius Ingram, maybe?
Yeah, he was a mid-round pick, right? Like a 4?
I think it was a 4 or 5. Yeah. That was a shame. He could never get healthy with those knees. Cornelius Ingram was maybe like 30 guys named Cornelius in the league. No, not Cornelius Bennett. Now Cornelius Bennett comes up on my screen. Don Cornelius just came up on my screen. You don't know who Don Cornelius is, do you? He was the host of Soul Train.
Okay.
He was a 5th round pick, Cornelius Ingram.
What year? 2010?
2009.
Okay.
Yeah. So they haven't drafted a late round tight end since him. So LJ Smith before that, maybe. So I haven't drafted a lot of them. Selleck was, what year was Selleck? 07?
I was going to say 5.
Yeah, you're probably
no,
right.
You might be right.
He retired in 17.
We can't make this whole podcast just us looking up things.
Well, at least there aren't as many guys named Selleck. There's only 2. 07. Yeah, he was a 5th round pick in 07 out of Cincinnati. How about how they got Trent Cole, Brent Selleck, and Jason Kelsey all in the 5th or 6th round out of the same college? That's crazy.
Not bad.
Anyway.
Yeah. The last position.
On the rails, Dave.
Yeah, the last position here, receiver. And it's funny, since I wrote this, I mean, and I did give them some top options because I feel like if there's a position on offense that they would spend money on in free agency, it would be receiver.
Sure.
But, I mean, let's be honest. Devontae Adams, he's not leaving Green Bay, especially not now. Chris Godwin, they're going to put together a deal for him in Tampa Bay. Mike Williams just got a huge deal. $60 million, $40 million guaranteed out in LA with the Chargers. He was the one, to me, that made the most sense because you looked at it and he's played for Nick Sirianni before, and he's the type of like big body receiver who will be a nice compliment for Devontae because he can make a huge difference in a game without feeding him 8-9 times. I mean, he can catch 3 balls and have a great game, and I think that would be a nice thing to pair with Devontae.
Yeah. I know everyone's going to be clamoring. Did you see Shady on he was on NFL Good Morning. He was great, by the way, talking about Amari Cooper. Eagles got to sign Amari Cooper if he gets cut. I like Allen Robinson. It's not a super sexy pick, and he's not a flashy guy, but I think he's really solid. And I think this past year, their whole offense was a disaster. I would just throw out this year with him. And
that's what his agent's saying too. Throw out 2021.
Yeah, I mean that's his job, but I mean really, Nagy was in so far over his head. Their quarterback play was terrible. It was just their O-line was bad. It was just a bad situation on offense. And I mean, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you look at those years. He's still a young guy. He's 29, I believe. Mm-hmm. I like him. I've always liked him. He's solid. He's not one of those diva receivers that's not going to fit into your locker room. He'd be at the top of my list.
Yeah, and he kind of fits the Mike Williams mold where he can make some of those big-bodied catches, and you don't have to feed him a ton. I think that's when you have a receiver like Devontae Smith, I want them going into every game figuring out, we got to get this guy the ball 10 times. And how do we do it? And if your other receiver doesn't need that, it's kind of an advantage. If you're like, Allen Robinson catches 4 or 5 balls, he can have a big impact on the game. He's kind of like Mike Williams, and he'll probably be cheaper than that too, you would think.
He better be.
Yeah.
Or they're not spinning them.
Yeah. All right. But then there are some other names here. Zach Pascal, who Nick Sirianni loves.
Talks about him all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Pascal was like a guy who came in the league, and I think half of Sirianni's coaching tape is just him running routes. He loves that guy. So for obvious reasons, that makes a ton of sense. Michael Gallup, who, I have him on the list. If the Cowboys cut Amari Cooper, they're not letting Cedric Wilson or Michael Gallup go. That's probably the reason they do it.
Right.
Juju Smith-Schuster, he's a slot only, but the Eagles showed some interest last year. And I have faith in Quez Watkins as an outside receiver. So I know a lot of these are outside only guys, but if they were to get a slot guy, I still think you can put Quez outside and use his speed in a different way.
Yeah, well, I'd be fine with that. Yeah, I think Quez is going to have 1,000 yards next year. How about that? There's a prediction.
Wow, it's a heck of a prediction. I got to hold you to that.
Yeah.
And they sign Allen Robinson. You go, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to have.
All right, so I'll say either Quez or Allen Robinson will have 1,000 yards.
Okay, I like that. Well, that was it. But I still think it would make sense for them to sign some sort of veteran receiver. And it doesn't have to be the top guy. Whoever it ends up being, it's probably going to be Amari Cooper on the open market once he gets cut. But they got to do something.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page with the veteran receiver thing. I think for a lot of reasons. And, when Devontae comes out in an interview and says, I hope we sign a veteran receiver, I mean, that tells you how much they need it. You just need that. You need that presence in the room. You need that veteran presence. They just don't have. I mean, Greg Ward's fine, all fine and good, but they need that veteran guy to come in that you can really, really count on 3rd and 8.
All right, the last thing here we wanted to get to today, and by the way, we'll have defense on the next pod. We'll go through some free agent targets, but the Eagles have a bunch of pending unrestricted free agents. It's not a glamorous list because they did some heavy lifting early and re-signed most of that 2018 class, but some notable names. So we'll just go through and we'll try to put percentages on it. Reuben and I have put percentages on it, but we haven't exchanged them yet. So this is a fun game that we're going to play live here and see how it goes. But let's start with Rodney McLeod. Do you want to go first or want me to go first?
I'll go first. I put him at 58%.
Okay.
I put Rodney at 58%. Yeah, he played better the second half of the year, but you wonder about that. I mean, he's getting up. He's getting up there, and I think they understand they've got to add some juice to that secondary. And I think if they want him, he'll come back. He likes being here, but I think it's close to 50-50, but I wanted to go a little bit over that.
I want a lot over that. I want 72%.
Okay.
I think he's going to be back next year. It's funny. If you would have asked me this a few months ago, I would have been well under 50%, but he played so much better down the stretch. It gave me a reason to think that he finally got over the knee injury. And there's something to be said for continuity. I mean, they're going to have so many other pieces moving in that secondary, keeping him for one more year. I'm not saying you break the bank for him, and if he ends up getting a better contract elsewhere, you say thank you, you let him move on. But I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I don't think teams are going to be knocking down the door, and I think he's more valuable here than he is elsewhere. So, I went a little higher on that.
Yeah, I'm just not sure he can run anymore. And he did look better the second half of the year. That's why I'm still up at, I mean, we're only off by 14% between us, but I just have I just have some doubts. Yeah.
Okay. The next one is Derek Barnett. I don't think it's very likely. But what I will say is I don't think it's a 0. I have a 0 on here, or 2 zeros on here. Derek Barnett's not a 0 to me. And I know that's going to annoy people, but on the market, he's going to get paid, I think. But if he doesn't get paid and he's looking for a 1-year deal because the market didn't develop the way he thought it would, or the Eagles thought it would, and if he's sitting there and you can get him for a discount, I don't think it's wild to bring him back. I went 10%.
Okay. We're in the same ballpark. I went 15.
I never thought I'd see the day where you had a higher percentage on Barnett than me.
But you know what really made me go over 0 was just the dead money. Like, if they're already paying him $7.2 million if he's not here. I mean, when they restructured him back in August, so they already made a commitment to him financially. And I mean, the only way I think it would happen is if it's, if the market isn't there for him. I mean, Pro Football Focus projected 3 years, $12.5 million for a guy who had 2 sacks last year. I just can't believe it. I mean, I want
to let people know that's 12.5
per year. Yeah. Per year, $37.5 million with, what did they say, 20 million guaranteed, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, he had 2 sacks last year. He had as many sacks in 5 years as Reggie had in 12 games in 87. Had 21 sacks, 12 games, strike shortened season. So I think there's a chance, but I think it's very unlikely.
Next one, Steven Nelson did a fine job as CB2, but he's older. The Eagles are already investing. What?
Out of order, I had Anthony Harris next, but go ahead.
Oh, I skipped Anthony Harris. He is there for me. I apologize. I jumped the gun. I would have missed him completely.
You
Anthony Harris is there.
You jumped offside. See that?
Yeah. Anthony Harris. He is the next one on the list here. Another guy can say he's a little older. They brought him in for a 1-year, $4 million deal. I guess you could say is worth that money. I don't think he's going to get paid much more than that. I guess it's my turn here. Is your turn or my turn?
It would be my turn if we're alternating.
Your turn. Yeah.
I'll take the odd numbers. I think it's very low. I went 6%. He didn't make plays. He just didn't do anything that made you think, wow, there's something there.
Yeah, I went a tad higher. I went 20%.
Wow, really?
And, my thinking there was if Rodney goes elsewhere and they're like, man, we can't change everything. He knows the system. He can come back for a year that's pretty cheap. We do it that way. So I went 20%. Maybe that's too high, but that was my thinking on it.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair. I mean, they don't have any safety, so you're going to have to find them somewhere. That was
kind of my thinking. All right, the next one is Steven Nelson. Another 1-year deal. Didn't really have a chance to see the market last year because he got released so late by Pittsburgh. He came here, and he's been pretty honest about wanting to find more money in free agency, and I think he will. So I think he's probably gone, but I wanted to leave the option open to bring him back because, like I said, he wasn't bad last year. So I went 22%. I still think he's gone, but it wouldn't shock me if he doesn't get the deal elsewhere and he comes back.
It's funny. You're higher than me on 3 out of the 4 so far, but significantly higher, like 10% and more. I went 12%. I just think the market's going to be there for a corner who played fairly well this year, and I think the Eagles are going to sign draft a corner in the first round. Nelson, he's not going to get a contract. I mean, you're not going to be able to sign him to be a 3. So I just don't see him being back. I just don't see it happening. And I think it seemed like he kind of understood that as the year went on. But like you said, maybe the market won't be there. I mean, if the cap is $208 million, I think guys are going to get some money. So, but then again, obviously the Eagles would have more as well. But I'm going 12% with Nelson.
Okay. How about Ryan Kerrigan?
What's that?
How about Ryan Kerrigan?
I went 0.0000001%.
I went a tad lower.
Really? We have zeros across the board?
Zeros across the board. I don't even want to talk about him anymore. I feel bad ripping on the guy because he had this really great career and he came here and just had nothing left, and it's a shame, but he's not going to be back.
I don't know. There's a 0.00001% chance he is.
All right. How about Hassan Ridgeway? I guess I'll take this one.
Sure.
I don't think it's very likely. But what I will say is he was a serviceable rotation guy, got a veteran salary benefit deal last year. Last year, I think I had him at 65% to be back, and he was back. I'm not that high this year, and he stayed healthy, so it probably tells you about how he played. I would have him at 20%. I think it's possible because they don't really have much there beyond Fletcher and Hargrave.
Yeah, I'm actually the exact same at 20%.
Oh, wow.
Which I might have to change it now. I don't like when we agree, but yeah, I think they will work. I don't think it's a priority to remake the interior of the D line. I mean, Fletch and Hargrave, but I think if something comes down the pike that can improve them, they'll jump on it. But I do think there's a chance he'll be back. He takes up space. He gets in the way a little bit. I mean, he can get 30 snaps. You don't even notice that he played, but the defense played okay. He's not the worst D tackle in the league. he's going to be cheap. So yeah, I think there's a chance he's here another year. He's another one who was with Nick in Indy.
Yeah, barely played because he was hurt, but he was there. How about Jannard Avery?
I didn't know what to do with him, Dave. I can't figure it out. I do think they need to get better at that spot, but it's a tricky spot. That Sam, really specific skill set they're looking for. He's a weird player because he can there'll be a stretch of 4 snaps where he'll get a sack, knock down a pass, get a tackle for loss, and you're like this. He's the greatest player I've ever seen, and then you don't notice him for a month. He makes these crazy plays, and he's like, wow, they have something there, and he disappears. I went high on Avery just because he gave up a 4 for him. Was it a 4 or a 5? Gave up a pick for him, a 4. At the trade deadline a couple of years ago. Howie seems to like him. I think it's tricky. I don't think it's the easiest thing to fill that spot. So I went 30.
I went higher than that.
Really? I thought I was going crazy high.
My reasoning is because when we did stay or go, I had him staying.
So you got to go 50% or 51%.
So I went 51% because I really put myself in a box here. But
Dave, do you honestly think if you picked 51% on stay or go and then put him at 49% here, anybody who's going to call you out on it?
I would know.
Okay.
All right. The next one,
Howie. Dave, I don't really understand what you're doing here.
We kept him. We're keeping him. The next one is Jordan Howard. This was a kind of a tough one to figure out too, because there were moments where he carried the team in 2021, and then he was nothing. He was inactive at the end. So I don't know. And I also try to figure out there was nothing available for him last year. I can't imagine there's anything available for him this year. It really comes down to whether or not the Eagles want to bring him back.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure they do.
I think it's your turn to pick a number first.
I'll go 20.
I went 15. Because I think there's a chance, if they don't want to, tender Boston Scott because they feel like Gainwell and Miles, and they could lose him and then keep Howard as the third back. So I went 15. You went 20. So we're in the same range there.
Yeah. And the last one is Jason Kroom. He was injured all last year. I went 0 on this. I just, I don't really know much about him, honestly, other than he caught a touchdown a couple years ago.
I went 3%. The only reason I went above 0 was because they're so light at tight end. Yeah. So maybe he comes out and has this great training camp.
He's a free agent, so they have to sign him first.
Well, they could easily just keep signing him for a minimum with no guarantee or anything, and then just bring him to camp. But if they don't have anything other than Goddard that they can really rely on, not that they can rely on him, but I've seen him catch a pass, so
good start.
Get in the end zone. I don't know. I just went 3 just because they're so thin at tight end.
Fair enough. All right. Well, that was it. That was fun. We were pretty similar on a lot of those.
Yeah, let's see. Our biggest disparity was we were off by 0.00001 on Kerrigan. Our biggest disparity was 21. We were off 21 on Avery. I had 30. You had 51. Yeah. We were off 14 on McLeod. I had 58. You had 72. We were also off 14 on Anthony Harris. I had 6. You had 20. What did you say on Jordan Howard? Were you at 20?
Jordan Howard, I was at 20, yeah. So 5.
So, and Kroom, you're at 0. So yeah. But we're in the same ballpark on most of them. Yeah. B is certainly going to be an interesting day next Monday.
Yeah, it will be. That's when free agency really starts. That's the legal tampering window. The league year starts on Wednesday. So it's fun. We're back from the combine, and we're ready to go for free agency. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube,
You didn't ask me if I had
click
anything else.
That's coming.
Okay.
That's coming.
All right.
If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Rube, do you have anything else?
No.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later this week.